Hey guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Today's video is going to be the second true crime case that I have covered this week. I do try and avoid doing too many at once. However, this specific case was requested by one of you guys who is very active on my channel, so I wanted to get this video up as soon as possible once I started researching it. So with that all being said, let's jump right into today's video. In today's video, we are going to be focusing mainly on two people. Nathan Carman and his mother, Linda Carman. Nathan was born in Middletown, Connecticut to his parents, Clark and Linda Carman. His parents ended up getting a divorce when Nathan was quite young, and because of that, Nathan's father, Clark, really wasn't involved in Nathan's life whatsoever. Now let's talk a little bit about Nathan, who was on the spectrum, meaning that he does have autism, but he is considered to be very high functioning. Linda, who again is Nathan's mother, is a nurse who works in a hospital with other people who have autism similar to her son. Nathan didn't have too many friends growing up, and because of that, him and Linda were extremely close, with Nathan often saying several times that his mom was his best friend. They spent so much time together, and one of their favorite activities to do together was to go fishing. Now, Nathan absolutely loved fishing, and Linda wasn't really big into fish or anything like that, but she loved going fishing because it meant she got to spend time with her son, and he got to spend time with his mom, so it was overall just a very good thing for both of them. They really liked to go out and fish and just spend quality time with one another. Nathan around this time was now in his 20s, I believe being around the age of 24 to 26, and him and his mom did go fishing quite often. So on September 17th, 2016, they decided that they were going to take another fishing trip. However, this was not going to be like every fishing trip that they ever went on. They decided that they wanted to try out deep sea fishing. They left the dock around midnight, so it was very, very late in the evening on September 17th, when they had left the dock to head out to try deep sea fishing. Nathan had recently purchased an aluminum boat that was around 31 feet, and I need you to remember that in your head because that boat is not the biggest boat ever. It's actually quite small. So they headed out on this fishing trip on that boat. Usually they would go out fishing in an area called Block Island, which was only 20 miles from the shore. However, this time they were going to be going deep sea fishing, so they did need to go a little bit further. The area that they had headed out towards was the Block Canyon area. Now again, they were going to be trying deep sea fishing, but this was something that neither Linda or Nathan had ever done before. The following day, which was now Sunday, September 18th, Linda's friends who she had spoken to about the fact that her and Nathan were going on a fishing trip noticed that Nathan and Linda were not home, and this seemed to worry them quite a bit, enough that they went down and reported the mother and son missing to the Coast Guard. Now the Coast Guard immediately held a search, and they looked everywhere. They actually held quite a thorough search of the general area in the water and everything like that, and this search lasted for a total of 6 days, but nothing turned up during this search whatsoever. And then on September 25th, something very strange had happened. A huge ship was out on the water when they noticed a small raft with a person on it floating in the water. They were able to get close enough to this raft and kind of help the person off, and the person who was floating on this raft was Nathan. He said that he had been floating on that raft for 8 days and that his boat had sank. He said that he was able to survive for these 8 days by having water packets as well as protein bars in his emergency kit, but his mother was still nowhere to be found. So again, Nathan had been floating around in the middle of the ocean on this raft for a total of 8 days. So obviously, once he was rescued, he was extremely tired, he was hungry, it was just a horrible time. So they brought Nathan back to shore, he rested, they gave him some food, and then he was interviewed by the Coast Guard. He told the Coast Guard that him and his mother had left on September 17th, and when they had left, the water was very, very calm. They had arrived at Block Canyon just as the sun was coming up, and they planned on staying out there all day fishing, but around midday is when they started to hear a strange sound coming from the engine compartment. Nathan went to investigate the situation, and that is when he found that the engine compartment on the boat was filling up rapidly with water. He said that at this point, Linda and himself both thought that this problem could easily be fixed, so they were both standing over the engine compartment trying to find a solution to their problem. But he said the problem quickly escalated, and that is when he realized that this probably wasn't going to be a good scene, and that their boat was now sinking. When he realized this, he threw the raft that he was found on into the ocean and jumped off the boat and swam out to it. But he said after that he has no idea where his mother went. She had been with him while they were trying to figure out the situation with the engine compartment, but once he threw the raft in the water and jumped in himself, he had no idea where his mom went, and he said after that the boat just vanished as well. Now, just brushing over this case, you might just think that this is a very unfortunate series of events that these two people unfortunately came to the circumstances of, and that Linda somehow ended up very sadly and devastatingly sinking along with the ship. And when I was first brushing over this case, I was like, okay, yeah, like, it's tragic, of course, but why would I be talking about this? Well, as we dive deeper into today's video, you are going to realize that there are some very, very confusing facts in this case that leave me personally having no idea what I think happened that day out there on the ocean. Nathan was quickly brought in for questioning, and he was talked to by the media and all of those kinds of things. There was cameras and people in his face constantly after this had happened, and the media and the public started to kind of speculate that Nathan was kind of acting a little bit strange. He didn't really seem like he had too much emotion towards what had just happened to him. But I think that something we kind of need to keep in our minds here is that Nathan is autistic, so that kind of explains why he might have been coming off a little bit strange in my opinion. At this time, however, the police started to look into Nathan and Linda's family and their background just to try and figure out, who exactly they were dealing with and what could have possibly happened. And that is when they discovered that Linda was pretty well off, and now with her gone, a lot of her money and things like that were left behind were now left to Nathan, which would kind of give him a little bit of a motive. Because this would kind of give Nathan a little bit of a motive and the story did sound a little bit strange, police started to look at the possibility that maybe this was a little bit more than an accidental drowning or an accidental sinking, I guess. And that is when they brought in some professional fishermen to kind of question them and figure out what they thought about the case. Now, I personally know absolutely nothing about fishing. However, these professional fishermen came in and said that they found it to be very strange that two unexperienced people would go out deep sea fishing. Now, I guess usually when you go deep sea fishing, you're fishing for tuna, or maybe Nathan and his mother were specifically fishing for tuna, but these fishermen said that that would be a very strange thing for two people to do alone, because tuna are quite heavy and usually you need upwards of 3 people to actually pull the tuna out of the water. On top of that, they said that there was no way that Nathan's boat was big enough to do deep sea fishing on. There were just so many things in this case that seemed extremely strange. One of these things being that Nathan had absolutely no support from his family after this had all happened. His aunts wanted nothing to do with him, but on top of that, while doing more investigating, police found that there was actually a radio on the boat that Nathan could have used at any time to call help, but he didn't. And when he was asked about this, he told investigators that the reason he didn't use the radio to call help is because he didn't think the boat was sinking. But in my personal opinion, I just feel like whether you think the boat is sinking or not, you have this very big problem and you're quite a ways from shore, so you think that you would want to call for help or give somebody a heads up just to be safe. Again, I'm not familiar with fishing or anything like that, but that would just be my own personal opinion on that situation. Now, going back to what I mentioned about his family wanting nothing to do with him, Nathan had 3 aunts who he was quite close to prior to this incident. However, they don't want anything to do with him. They are Linda's sisters, and they think that there is more to this story than Nathan is letting on, and that he could possibly be responsible for Linda's either death or the fact that she is missing. That being another thing that kind of seems strange to the public, because usually when a tragedy like this happens, families come together and want to take care of those who were straight up affected by the tragedy. However, in this case, they're all kind of splitting up and nobody is having Nathan's back or helping him out at all, which seems pretty strange. On top of that, after you start to look into Nathan a little bit, that is when you find that there is a little bit more to his background and this story than you might originally think. So, this was not the first time that Nathan had been missing and then was found. He had ran away when he was in high school. He had a horse. The horse passed away. He was absolutely devastated. He ran away and he was found quite a ways away from his home and he was brought back. Now, obviously, that has nothing to do with this entire thing. Many people run away, especially in their teenage years. So to me, that just didn't seem like it was the most important piece of information. However, what I'm going to talk about next, I find to be very, very important in this case. Growing up, Nathan was extremely close to Linda's father, John. John was Nathan's grandfather and they spent a lot of time together and again were just very, very close. But in December of 2013, John was found shot to death in his home in Connecticut. Whoever was responsible for John's murder has never been identified, but what is so strange about this is originally Linda was the investigator's main suspect in this case. Linda and John had recently got into a fight and it had turned violent on one end, which I believe was Linda's, and because of this, police believed that that gave her a motive and maybe she was responsible. She was so heated that she had taken her own father's life. However, there was no evidence to convict Linda of this. There was nothing linking her to the case. She did several polygraph tests and she passed every single one of them. And so because of this, she kind of got dismissed as a person of interest. After Linda was dismissed as a suspect in this case, that is when investigators started to take a closer look at Nathan. Nathan was the last person to see John alive, as the two of them had gone out for dinner earlier on the night that he was murdered. Police could not verify where Nathan was when the murder had taken place, and to make matters even worse, Nathan had thrown out his computer hard drive and gotten rid of his car GPS on the morning that John's body was discovered. On top of that, Nathan had also recently made a purchase of a rifle, which was the same make and model of the rifle that was used to murder John. The murder weapon has never been found, and Nathan had told investigators that he had lost that rifle, so there was no way to check if his rifle and the rifle that was used in the murder were the same. But there was never enough evidence in this case to convict Nathan of absolutely anything, but police say that this case is still open and Nathan is still a person of interest. Now, personally, I just think that this is so strange to be being considered as a suspect in two cases involving family members. That just seems extremely strange to me. After this case started to gain a little bit more traction, that is when eyewitnesses started to come forward to police saying that they had seen firsthand Nathan doing work on his boat in the day before him and Linda had set off for that fishing trip. Now, whether he was doing this work on the boat and he had intended for it to go wrong and to sink the boat, or he just did it accidentally, a lot of people believe that the work that Nathan had done on the boat that day was what ultimately caused the boat to sink. Now, something that I just can't wrap my head around in this case is how you would sink a boat to kill somebody who was not yourself. Obviously, sinking a boat is risking your own life as well. This case just seems so strange. I can't make up my mind. Every single side just seems so bizarre to me. In 2017, when things seemed to have calmed down a little bit, Nathan tried to make an insurance claim on his boat. However, the insurance company came back, denied this claim, and said that the boat had sank because of something that Nathan had done to the boat. Nathan was extremely angry about this, and so he decided to take the insurance company to court. But the judge agreed with the insurance company, and Nathan's defense tried to say that the boat was in bad condition when Nathan had purchased it. However, that is when they brought in the previous owner of the boat who had sold this boat to Nathan, who said that the boat was in next to perfect condition when he had sold the boat to Nathan, meaning that it was ruled in this court that the boat had sank either directly or indirectly because of something that Nathan had done. And then in December of 2019, Nathan tried to get his case re-looked at. He said that this was not about the insurance money, which would have been about $85,000, but that he wanted to clear his name because he didn't want to be known as a person who lost his mother at sea. But the judge completely denied these claims and again stood by the insurance company, not Nathan. I really can't be too sure what I think in this case. Nathan and his aunts are still not on good terms. They do believe that he was involved or had some kind of hand in both John and Linda's murders, and his aunts had actually taken him to court because they wanted to keep Nathan from getting any of the money from his mother's estate. Usually I have some kind of opinion or I lean towards one side more than the other in these kinds of cases, but in this specific case I really just can't make up my mind what I think. Obviously, there are some very strange points that make this look like maybe it was intentional, but then there are other points that make you kind of think, how can you plan on getting rid of somebody by sinking a boat that you're on? How did Nathan know that he was going to be rescued? He said again that he was out on that raft for 8 days, and there was no way of him knowing that this big ship was going to come and see him. So the likelihood of him doing this and planning so strategically in this case and then putting himself in a life or death situation where he could have ended up passing away, it's just all confusing and leaves me with so many questions. Another strange thing about this case that I did not mention throughout the video, but I probably should have, that I came across while researching for this case, was that experts studied the raft that Nathan was found on, and they said that there was absolutely no way that Nathan was out on this raft for 8 days. But if there was absolutely no way he was out in the middle of the ocean on this raft for all those days, then where was he? That is just another thing in this case that completely stumps me and leaves me again with more questions than answers. This case is a super confusing one, so I really would like to know what you guys think about this case and your opinions on what possibly happened that day. So please make sure to let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. But guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!